And joining us now for a reaction to the President's State of the Union and visit to Wisconsin is Representative Bryan Steil. First off, Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so the President in both speeches this week really stressed job creation. Is there a legitimate success story to tell there?
Coming out of the pandemic, we've been able to get many people back to work, but labor participation rates today are still lower than they were before the pandemic. And so while we've made strides, we still have a long ways to go to make sure we're helping all the workers who still find themselves on the sidelines get back to work.
I know a lot of your counter arguments that is inflation and the effect that that has had. So what is a way to reduce the inflation effect right now?
I think there's three key things we need to do to bring costs down for families that are struggling to be able to afford the bills. One, we have to stop the reckless spending in Washington. We just experienced 2 years of reckless Democratic one-party control spending here in Washington. That ends now that we took away the Speaker's gavel from Nancy Pelosi. Two, we need to unleash American energy. Energy costs show up not just in home heating costs, not just when you fill up your car, but also in your grocery bill, because in Wisconsin, we know it's a diesel tractor that's in the fields during the harvest and a diesel truck bringing those goods to the grocery store. And finally, we need to actually address our labor policies. We still find too many people who are finding themselves on the sidelines, and we got to help those folks get back to work. If we do those three things, I think we can make great strides in reducing costs.
During the State of the Union, some of your Republican colleagues interrupted the president, even heckled him. Is that appropriate decorum for the State of the Union?
I think broadly our political discourse in the United States needs a big turn of improvement. I think folks on all sides of the aisle have shown themselves to be not stellar at political discourse. I try to be a voice in Washington to bring folks together to actually address the problems of the day. I'd love to see all of our political discourse in the United States improve.
You talk about trying to bring people together. Some factions within the Republican Party appeared to form during the selection of the Speaker. Is your party unified right now?
I actually think you see conservatives in the House of Representatives incredibly unified, and in particular to address the runaway spending that we've seen in Washington. A lot of the frustration you saw play out during the first floor votes as we were electing Speaker McCarthy, I think really stems from the fact that Washington has been broken for so long. This is our opportunity now to really turn the tide and bring some adult solutions to the biggest challenge of the day, which is our runaway debt.
So both sides politically are entrenched right now when it comes to the debt ceiling debate. Do you want to see budget spending cuts? And if so, where exactly do you want to see that happen?
I think the real key here is to actually have reforms to put us on a long-term path back to stability. The president's budget under statute was due on Monday. He has no indication that he's even provide the budget before the end of the month. I think now's the time to sit down and have the adult conversation about how we get ourselves back on a path to stability. I think two easy things that are sitting out there are looking for ways to actually grow the economy. That'd be step one. And two, to bring down future growth in spending. Those two things, I think, should be easy for folks to be able to agree to. The step one, though, is to make sure the president's willing to come to the table to have that adult conversation.
Would you be willing to consider cuts to either Social Security or Medicare?
No, and I don't believe any Republican or Democrat is going to vote for such cuts. I think the importance here is making sure we protect Social Security and Medicare. In fact, it's the runaway spending in Washington that we've seen from the previous 2 years that has jeopardized those programs. What we need to do is dramatically turn the tide here so that we can actually protect Social Security and Medicare.
Speaker McCarthy appointed you the chair of the Committee on House Administration. What are your top priorities in that role?
It is a committee with kind of vast jurisdiction. I think there's a handful of things that we're going to be focused in on. One is election integrity, making sure that we continue to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. A review of election laws across this country is on our docket. Two, we have a significant oversight role here in Congress. We had a hearing this week with the architect of the Capitol, a significant legislative branch entity. We're going to have a robust oversight agenda as well. One of my goals is to make sure that Congress remains open and accessible to the American people. We ended proxy voting. Members now have to show up in this Congress. Unlike the last 2 years, we're making progress, and we're going to continue to make sure that we make reforms.
You mentioned, obviously, elections part of your new process here in that role. So what kind of changes do you think need to be done there?
Well, I think what we saw as we look back to last Congress is Democrats try to shove through H.R. 1. That was a federal government takeover of elections. It would have gutted voter ID laws. I think laws like voter ID are pretty simple, straightforward measures to make sure that we're making it easy to vote and hard to cheat. We're going to be looking at different states' laws, what works, what doesn't, and offer suggestions for improvements.
You mentioned partisanship, and you talked about trying to work together, finding adult solutions here throughout this interview. Obviously, we have now a divided Congress. You have a Democratic president. How do things get done here at this point, and can they get done?
Sometimes during periods of time in divided government, we've actually seen some of the greatest changes and reforms in our country's history. You can go back to Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. You can look at other administrations as well that have come to the table really for the benefit of the country and to get our fiscal house in order. President Biden hopefully changes his tune, meets with conservatives here in the House of Representatives, and we put forward a path to get ourselves back to fiscal stability in a reasonable and responsible way. Time will tell, but I'm going to continue to work until proven otherwise.
All right, Congressman, we appreciate the time here today.
Thank you.